past always trying to pull me back. But the growth inside makes me stronger than it. My past don't make me weaker, it makes me stronger, pushes me forward. Just look at the miles I've run, won't let them come undone. I work too hard, I'll keep on walking, keep on fighting, 'cause I'll win. I'm gonna win. No more questions, no more doubts. I know what I gotta do. I won't let nothing hold me down. The prize is what I'm headed to. That's why I ain't looking back. Look good. I ain't going back.
All right. Good evening, everyone. This is your boy, Brother Brady, representing for iRock. I want to welcome everyone to the Kingdom Podcast. This is episode 2. Super excited to be back with you guys here in this virtual space. As we all know, back in June, during the National Baptist Congress, we started our first episode of the Kingdom Podcast. Just a little reminder, the Kingdom Podcast is a podcast that is targeted to the next generation, the now generation, to discuss everything about God, His Word, His church, and His world. So on tonight, man, I have a great topic that I want to get into. I like to worship. I like to sing some songs. I like past but not. But also, as much as I want to get into my traditional old 100s, I like some of the new stuff. So I sing Jira. I like Promises from Mad City. So on tonight, we're going to discuss Black gospel music with two of my good brothers and good representatives and artists within Black gospel music. I have my boy, you know him as the newly minted iRock director for the National Baptist Convention under the NBCYYA, Mr. Carlos Nichols. Shout out to Carlos. What's up, man? Glad to have you, bro.
What's going on, Brother Brady? So excited to be here. So excited about tonight's topic. Ready to engage. So here we go.
Oh, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. And then I'm also bringing in my brother from right here in OKC, right here with me. Man, I've known this dude for some years now. A heart of gold and a voice to match. My guy has done everything from Tiny Desk to worship sets in the UK. Check him out on YouTube and on Apple Music and wherever you get your music downloaded from. After this podcast, my guy is lit. We have none other than the one and only Sean C. Johnson.
Thank you for that, Brady. That was a very nice intro. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I appreciate
and
that.
And it's the price. So no banger.
That's hilarious.
No banger.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me on, man. This is awesome.
But guys, man, like I said, one big thing that I take pride in is within the Black church and Black Christianity that we love worship. It's a staple, a part of the foundational pillar of what we do. And with that, man, we have musically changed the way music as an art form has been done in this world.
For sure.
If you look back into our history, we have Black spirituals from the slaves' times that led into blues.
Mm-hmm.
And the offset of that went into making the B.B. King. Then you have from blues to jazz, and jazz into R&B, and R&B leading up to hip hop. And they all have influences from what was created by believers within the Black church. So when we look at that, we have these offshoots of music and influences coming out of Black gospel music. But as you have the offshoots, they spring out, they're different. And sometimes they don't quite sound the same as like what we might consider the pillar or the foundation of that said music group. So I want to start off tonight with asking this question. What would each of you guys define as the true sound of Black gospel music? And I want to start with Carlos first.
Thank you for handing him that grenade first. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Wow, wow. So I mean, so we're coming out the gate swinging, right? Okay,
Oh,
Right.
we going there. We going there.
so let me say, the true sound of Black gospel music. I would say that it's not necessarily instrumentation, right? Or it's nothing that's audible per se. That it has very distinct markers. But I think the true sound of what we're looking for, and what we're looking, not looking, what we're looking to hear, is actually story, right? So
Mm.
Black music, period, is a culmination, aggregation of the stories of people, right? Stories of people in this United States, right? This particular context, our ancestors who came across the Atlantic, right? Those who survived, right? And even paying homage to those who chose not to come, right? And those stories of a faith that is rooted in an understanding that there has to be a God that's on our side to have allowed us to survive on this
Yeah.
land. So, is there a sound? I would say that there's
Yeah.
not necessarily a sound, right? Because it's as diverse, as we are, even in our churches, that has always existed. As
Sure.
black persons went into churches, right, into high church, right? Those are very, very hymn-based churches, to what we call low church. The church that existed in the hush harbors, right? It's about storytelling. Can we hear stories when we're singing, and can we hear testimony, and can we hear about a God that is on the side of an oppressed people in the United States?
It's a great answer. Wow. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. No, he touched on, I agree with everything Carlos said. I will piggyback on that and say, he mentioned diversity, and I think that's the key thing. Like, we as Black people, we're not a monolith. Like, each of us are not the same. We're gonna have different tastes, and it's gonna be the thing about music. I've always been of the mindset that music is always gonna be subjective. So I'm glad that he brought up the fact of the heart of what makes Black gospel music, specifically Black gospel music, is the stories, the heart behind it. What it's rooted in is what makes it unique to us. So with that being said, I think what makes gospel music, I think it's a combination of, if your DNA says that you are Black, a Black person, whatever you decide to create, that is Black gospel music. But I think the heart of it, what it is you're talking about, not so much the presentation sonically, what you're how it sounds, but basically the heart of it, like the words. What are you saying? What are you presenting? What are you giving? How are you edifying? How are you encouraging? I think that, to me, speaks to the heart of what Black gospel music is. Yeah, it's got some. It's almost like food. Like, I'm a foodie, so there's soul food, and then there's home cooking. Like, you can go to a different store. Like, there's levels to, like, there's a different type of a seasoning. And off camera, we had mentioned, I don't know if you're ready to bring this up, but we had mentioned the Stellar Awards and how it ended. Like, there were certain aspects of it that were highlights, but the highlights were that seasoning. Like, that was the seasoning. Like, it was Black gospel music, but the things that we remember, though, that seasoning. So I mean, we can go down that rabbit hole, but yeah.
And I like the soulful reference because it's kind of like Cracker Barrel.
Mm-hmm.
Cracker Barrel's good.
Oh, it's good. I like Cracker Barrel.
Country food.
It's good food.
Biscuits and gravies and pancakes, they good.
Delicious.
But it ain't Mama Eats.
It's not Mama Eats. It's not. It's different.
Same biscuits, same from the same store, but some about Mama Eats just makes it Mama Eats, and it's not.
It's not Cracker Barrel. It's not the same.
I got a question for y'all. What does that restaurant look like that y'all just referenced?
Oh. Listen, checkered countertops.
It's got some character. We'll say that it's got some character. It's got some character.
History in that building, right?
Yeah, it's got some history. Yeah, it's got some history for sure. Yeah, but gospel music, like there's something to it. Like there's some weight to it. There's something when you hear it, it's hard to quantify because like I said, it's not no so much something sonically. Like so it's hard to say, you can't point and say, okay, that's gospel music, but like you know it when you hear it. Like it's really hard to just quantify and say, okay, this is gospel music, but like it's got to come from a genuine, authentic place, I think, to be considered gospel music, black gospel music. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think along with that, a lot of our theology is in our music.
For
Um,
sure.
if we, for instance, if we hear a song and they don't say Jesus at no part in the song, it's Jireh, Jehovah, Delight, Way, Oceans. Um, that's cool, but
Yeah.
we when we hear the word
Yeah.
Jesus in the song,
Yeah.
there's been times where you can just hear like there's a certain tone or certain word come up, and you don't even get to the rest of the song. You don't
Mm.
play none other note, and I think that stirring is in there because, much like in our preaching, our worship those go hand in hand. And in our preaching, we preach Jesus. We preach the name of Jesus. Our
Mm.
worship has the name of Jesus in it. So while I hear Jireh and Jehovah sounds great, when I hear something about the name of Jesus, not something about the
Mm.
name of Jireh, something about the name of Jesus moves
It resonates different. It does hit different.
because we think upon how we view and how we are taught Jesus.
To reference that name and how that name, the situations that name has been called out in,
That's
it
it.
goes back to what he was saying, like the history. It's got some history behind it. Like it's got so like certain phrases, certain phrasings, even in the music, like those things have history, like, and they have a meaning. Like as soon as we hear it, as soon as we know, we can almost tell where a song is going just based off of certain phrasing. Like
Mm-hmm.
that comes with familiarity with the culture, with the like those little things that you don't have to teach. Like that's why it's hard to you just know it. Like it's hard. I don't want to put rules on it and say it has to check this box if it don't check that box, but it's just gospel music when you hear it. Like it's a difference for sure.
Yeah,
For
and I think
sure.
Brady, like you were headed towards somewhere, and Sean, you were headed the same place.
Hmm.
There's this undeniable link between gospel music and preaching, right? Um, the
Yeah.
the elements of black preaching that set it aside from other what categories, the homiletitions that we would categorize as non-black preaching, right? So
Hmm.
that repetition, right? Repetition of the name Jesus, right? If
Yeah.
you say what we say, the more I call it, the better I feel. And if
Yeah.
somebody says Jesus 15 times, it will wreck your church, right? Because
By the 12 Jesus, we up.
Hey, we out
we
of
are
there.
we
We
are
out of there.
because it also reminds folks of what it felt like you said, Sean,
Yeah.
to have to be in a deep, dire situation, and
Yeah,
all you can do
man.
is call on the name
Call
of
that
Jesus,
name.
right?
Yeah,
And
man.
over and over and over again, right? And so
Yeah.
there are these links to our specific culture that,
Hmm.
as much as we try to divorce them, they really can't get away from each other, right?
Can't.
And it gets so ingrained, right? Gospel is so ingrained in who we are, as a people
For
and as a
sure.
culture, that even if you come outside of the gospel genre, right?
Yep.
I look at Fantasia,
Oh
right?
man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Like literally
yeah.
everything
Soon as
she
she come out
sings,
them shoes, it's over.
right?
Like it's over. It's a wrap, man.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
even the way she sings it, right? It's it's
Yeah.
it's preachy, right? It sounds like sermon, right? So those
Yeah.
characteristics can never be divorced from
Yeah.
this gift that we have, which is gospel music. And as much as we try to, let me be honest. I
Go
have friends
for it.
that have taken big checks from big churches, and guess what their job was? Their job was to go into these large mega churches and clean up black
Sheesh.
gospel music so that it was palatable, right? So
Wow.
I mean, six-figure jobs, You're hired to be the MD at this church. We like gospel, but we need you to clean it up. But it never fails. Every time I watch a clip, as much as they try to clean it up, sanitize it, make it non-black,
Yeah.
if the right person sings the song
Hey.
and says it ain't Jesus 3 times, then that conservative church has flipped
Yeah.
inside out and somebody get called into the office,
We
right?
wrecked.
Because you
Yeah,
can't,
we wrecked.
you can't
Everybody's
divorce it
wrecked.
from- everybody's wrecked. You can't divorce it from testimony. You
Yeah.
can't divorce it from the repetition, and most of all, it's written from the heart, right? It's written from
Yeah.
struggle. One thing I think that is missing from non-gospel music is that it's not written from a place of having to overcome. So Brady, it's easy to sing about the trees and the ocean and all of that when you have nothing else to identify with or find God in, right? So let me go to the depths of the oceans to try to find God. Nah, I can go to the corner.
Bruh.
That's it. No, that's it, man.
That
That's
only
it.
had $3 to get
Yeah.
snack wraps and a $1 iced tea, and they can
Yeah.
testify that God moved on their behalf because
Yeah.
in that moment when they needed a miracle to happen, God showed up through somebody in an unexpected way. But if that ain't been your life, then you got to go and look to the oceans and listen to the breezes.
Bro, that's it, man. No, it's like you said, it's those stories, it's those testimonies. Like it's rooted in that. Like that's what gospel music, like that's the heart of it. Like that's what makes it stick with you because that's what you resonate with. Like I'm able to resonate like the music that I write. Like people wouldn't consider it traditional gospel music. And I think like that's a conversation we can kind of get into, but like because like I consider what I do to still be gospel music. Like it's sonically, it's not a traditional gospel music, but I think it classifies and it can play on gospel stations because it fits from a cultural aspect. There are things in my music that check those boxes. It speaks from a personal experience. These are my stories that other people can resonate with. And I think what he was talking about, like that's what connects with those people. Like that struggle, like when you have to fight through something, like because everybody's not in a place where like they can just worry about the trees and the ocean. Like I have to survive. Like I don't have time to worry about the beach. I got to get this rent paid. So it's like it's a different mindset. It's a different approach to the music and it's a different heart. You could hear it in the music. So yeah, that's really good. Really, really good.
I think that's why when we look at our old 100s, it's just there's one melody for 7 hymns that we sing. It's not about the melody.
The words.
Ain't nobody do me like Jesus. That melody can go for 7 other songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not about the melody itself, and I think that's where when I post that question, I think that's where like a lot of people like will like get caught up with it is in the sound of it. This kind of like, give me an E flat. If this ain't got an E flat in it, well then I'm going to sleep. Do I need to go up? I need to like kind of like in repetition. I need to say Jesus more than one time. Yeah. And I think for a lot of people who may be stuck on the traditional side of gospel, we get stuck in the sound sometimes. And a lot of times from a true worship standpoint, we get so stuck in the sound that we miss the message in the worship.
Yeah.
There's been plenty of times where they'll just be playing in the background and just like going up, and they're going up on a song that technically by that message of that song isn't really like a go up message. But once the organ up and the bass is doing his thing and the drummer then threw 2 sticks, like it don't matter what's being said, we're stuck on the sound, which we praise and we highlight in church. Like, oh yeah, the church was up. What did you think about? Oh, well, I don't know the song, but man, the organist was playing his butt off.
Yeah.
And we have jam sessions that are essentially those moments. And a lot of times we get caught up in the sound because we attribute the sound with gospel music and not the message of the music.
Yeah.
We love Pass Me Not as like a beginning, hymnal before a message. But whew, have you really just listened to that?
Man,
Like said the words?
there's a couple of those old hymns that like I was an adult, like, and like what a friend we have in Jesus. Like that's a powerful hymn.
Yeah.
Like oh, with needless pain we bear, all because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Like,
You don't even need a beat.
man,
That'll
right. That right
that'll
there, that
justify.
line alone, like
You can sing off of it. You can
right.
hum
But
it.
like, but it goes back, it ties in. Like that's a word in of itself. Like there's an element of preaching that is involved of just edifying or expounding on the word. Like it's the word. There's a depth there. Like there's meat there. Like there's something there that you can hold on to, that you can repeat to yourself when life gets hard. Like, oh, with needless pain we bear, all because we not carry everything to God in prayer. It's a reminder. Like, and I think that's what the word does for us. Like when we take these notes and we read back and things like that, but now it's in melody form. So it's essentially taking what the preacher was saying on Sunday, and now you can carry that with you in melody form throughout the week. So, but yeah.
And I think that was part of like what helped build like some of the foundational pieces of like Black church, was having those short melodic messages to carry through. If we look back on slave times, those slave hymns were just short messages to carry them through that day.
Yeah, man.
Until they actually get back to a full fellowship on Sunday in a worship space.
Yeah,
So when I think about like gospel music, and when I pose that question, I pose that because there's been a lot of like, there's been talk over the years, and we can push this even way back before the '90s and Kirk Franklin kicked off, even like to the '70s and '80s, whenever the mass choir really kicked in and we got a little bit more jazzy with our worship. Like we developed the church, and the church developed a sound that was familiar. And even though it's not monolithic, AME and Kojic and Baptist all sound a little bit different, but essentially we all get to the same point. There's been an argument on anything that kind of diverts from that or kind of presents a change or a shift, that it might sound good, but is it true gospel? It's the word in it.
Yeah.
Really, really of God? Is it anointed? Is there really oil in it?
Yeah.
I saw it talking about Mav City, like they shiny, but they ain't got no oil on. And I was like,
people are funny, man.
That's funny. They probably got a little oil.
No, I think
somewhere.
So to I guess to chime in on that, I think like music will always be subjective. Like, and I think we can't make our opinion or our taste the rule. Like, I think that becomes a danger. Like, you become very legalistic in saying, unless it sounds or looks like this, then it can't be considered this. I think you can have certain tenets or certain things that have to be in place. Like, it has to have some value. It has to be rooted in the word. It has to do like those things. I think you have to have certain recipes. Like, you can't bake a cake without, flour, eggs, and milk. Like, there are certain things that are going to be inherent, but like outside of that, there's a hundreds of cakes out here. Like, it doesn't have to always be a chocolate. It doesn't always have to be vanilla. That, like, you can add your own different seasoning to it to make it uniquely yours. But you can still be a part of a genre. Like a genre is a very big, like, yeah, it doesn't have everything in the genre is not going to sound the exact same, but there will be things in there that kind of cue you off and be like, okay, yeah, we can kind of put that in that genre over here. But yeah, man, like, it's always going to be subjective. Like, yeah, the moment you start saying like my opinion of what this should sound like is the rule, that's a dangerous game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I can jump here, I'm probably going to say something that's going to be a little controversial, but I don't.
All right. All right.
I am
We
theological
going
agitator.
All right.
We going.
But this whole definition of what is considered sacred versus secular, right, has gotten, people have used it to their advantage, right? When the reality is that the music of the Black church has always been cultural. It
Mhm.
has always been of an understanding of a lived experience in the world of the people who bring
Yeah.
it. And it is sacred because it is recognizing the needs of the people, right? And God's response to the needs of the people. If
Wow.
we're going by, like you said, Brady, this understanding of what traditional gospel is, and we go to the 20s, when Dorsey, okay, this is we're National
Yeah.
Baptist Convention USA Incorporated, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
man.
let's be honest, right? Our convention is the reason that things were bad. Okay, right? Right? So Dorsey comes in with all these jazz chords, right? Playing all this stuff. Y'all not supposed to be doing that, right? You're supposed to play this stuff that's in the hymn book, right?
Yeah.
But Dorsey, Lucy E. Campbell, right? All these
Yeah.
people who come out of our convention are pushing these limits, and that's why we have gospel music as it is right now. This is prior to other denominations making their mark, right? And so I find it interesting that now, like you said, there's this push for it's not gospel, it's got to fit this mold. It's like, nah, but
Yeah.
it was infused with jazz, right? And then later infused with blues chords, and then quartets
Yep.
are let me tell you, quartets are sacred blues shows, right?
Yeah.
If you really look at it, like, I
They be
mean,
getting it too.
I mean, listen, I love a
Getting
good
it.
quartet show. You pay
Hey,
your $30, you're gonna get your money's worth. I
you
can't
gonna
say
get all your money's worth. They gonna give you a show for
they're
sure.
gonna give you a show, right? You know,
For
and as it
sure.
continues to evolve, that there is no separation in what we call the
Mm.
sacred and the secular, but rather it is the experience of Black people, you know, of Black church folks, of Black folks in our communities existing in this tension of
Mm.
trying to navigate this world where their spirituality and their situation aren't always matching up at the same time, but navigating that middle place, right? And
Yeah.
so, you know, it's not counterculture. People are like, oh, we got to be countercultural. I push back. We've got to embrace culture, right?
Yeah.
Embrace it so that we're able to, number one, continue to be at the forefront of, as you said, Sean, earlier, what it can sound like sonically, but then
Yeah.
also how can we continue to allow it to evolve the way that it always has? If it was
Yeah.
not for Dorsey, we would still be singing hymns at the hymn book. But now
Bro.
we lift up Dorsey, right? As he is the father of gospel music, right? We
Yeah.
look at the Hawkins. The Hawkins were getting put out of Church of God in Christ. And
Oh,
here they
for
come with all
sure.
these sounds. They got these drums and this bass guitar and this electric guitar is sounding like rock music. Now
Yeah.
you can't go to a church service and have offering without singing "Thank You, Lord." And I'm gonna shut up.
Can't. Can't.
It's offering time. Here we go again. Give me some giving music. So now it's sacred giving music,
Now
right?
it's sacred now. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, man.
Man, and that even goes to like we was just like 20, 30 years ago with Kurt. Like
Yes.
every song that is a major church song today, 80% of them might have came from Kurt.
Kirk, man,
Mid
he
90s,
came in like a
oh,
whirlwind, man.
Kurt was like having the baby.
He was the
In
most
your
secular because I
phone,
grew up in a real strict household, a strict church in general. But like he was the most secular we could get, quote unquote. Like it was cool who was listening to Kirk. Like, yeah,
and that was the thing.
he was
Like,
edgy.
like
Yeah.
with Kurt, like, I mean, man, it's like, love my hometown pastor, love you, pastor. Gotta say this. I was growing up. It's probably mid '90s. Kurt, I think, just kind of run the stomp period.
Yep.
I'm lit.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Who wasn't?
this is
Who wasn't lit?
all over the church.
Yeah.
My pastor was one of the ones that was initially really against that shift in music. Like that's just hip hop stuff. And this was it was during a time where, I mean, I see now looking back, hip hop wasn't probably the best representation for music. It was like mid '90s East Coast gangbang hip hop times.
Yeah.
Where it sound like the gangbangers, the same Jesus in the music. I can understand them being like, "Hey, we don't really want that in Sunday school."
Yeah.
But my pastor, he held a musical that was all about old school traditional gospel music to go as a counter, and this was a counter protest to Kirk Franklin, and it was
That's
to
wild.
like display, showcase to the young people at that time. This is gospel music. It's not
So
fun. It's not revolution. You're not about to burn and turn nothing up. We're gonna pass the nut all the way through this thing. And
that's hilarious.
today,
Yeah.
my pastor sings Kirk Franklin.
Oh, he's rocking with Kurt.
And it's like, we oftentimes, like, it seems like every decade or every generation we have a shift that seems uncomfortable within the church when it comes to our worship and how it goes.
Yeah.
That's not it. That's not what the sound is, or the message. Like I was speaking about earlier, it doesn't sound like our theology. It doesn't sound like our messaging. We don't preach about oceans. We preach about Jesus being right in front of us and getting closer to us as we can be. Like, we find ourselves in every generation having these little shifts and rifts in gospel.
So I can actually speak to that a little bit. I think because I've been working with youth now for about 12 years. And one of the things that they say is you can only reach a generation, the generation before you and the generation after you. Like, that's connection wise. The generation after you and the generation before you. Anything after that, you're not going to be able to connect with them. And I think what you see is a lot of times in a lot of these churches is the leadership. They're holding on to leadership too long, and they're not bringing in someone who can connect with that generation that they're 2 generations detached from. Because, like, they're not going to be like your pastor. I'm assuming he's probably the age of your grandfather. Like, he's not going to be able to connect with you. Your parents may be able to listen to you. They were probably listening to Kirk before your pastor was.
Yeah.
Because, like, you can connect with that generation. Kirk is your parents' generation. So, like, but your pastor, he's too far removed from you. Like, he's not going to be able to connect with that. So I think that's what you see a lot of times is, like, that older generation, there's always going to be that, because, like, the further you get away, you're just not going to be able to get it. You're just not going to get it. And you got to be able to realize, hey, I can look for a certain thing. It doesn't have to look like my music, but, like, what is the message in it? What are they talking about? Can we get from that? It doesn't have to sound like it, but what are they talking about? And we can measure it and grade it off of that. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like, one thing that hasn't been acknowledged whenever we look at this idea of gospel music in the Black church is the people who produce it. Kind of going back to Carlos's point earlier, the people who produce the gospel music during the jazz periods and the blues periods, what were they doing the Saturday night before? Down at the juke joint.
They was
using
playing
those same bass
what they were doing?
guitars. Boom, 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 boom. Saturday night, 12 hours later, Saturday morning. Boom, 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 boom. Same tune.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we can't be too confused as a body to think that, you putting all this secular stuff in the church. It's the people who produce it are the same people.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Beyonce came straight out of her church in Houston.
Oh, for sure. Most of your big time musicians or artists or singers, like, they started in the church. Like, they all came out the church, man. And some of them still play at churches. So yeah, man.
And that's why we can get so hyped on Fantasia singing one of her personal songs, because foundationally there is that Black gospel within it. But
it's something familiar to us, man.
At a casino. She's not in church.
Yeah.
But they're so intertwined because even the production is from the same group of people. And that I want to kind of pivot off of that idea of the people and how they produce it to this next kind of question. When we look at, you might say, genres of Christian music, gospel Christian, how you want to kind of frame it, outside of what our realm of Black church. We now see that we have non-denominationals that may be kind of white or of other races, adding in black voices to kind of enhance their work experiences. Carlos kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. Um, since we just addressed that, the people take with them the tones of black gospel wherever they go. If we have someone who may have left black church and gone to, let's say, white church, and they take that tone with them and they now are leading or producing music in those spaces, how much of an influence would you consider that they're having on that music? And would you consider that music still the music of that new space that they're in? Or can their voice change and shift that?
So Brady,
Feel
you
free.
really gonna go there, right? You really gonna go there? Okay. Let's take a prime example, right? Okay. Tasha Cobb's Living. Break Every Chain was a CCM classic.
Yeah.
It was permeating. I don't know if I want to use the term non-black church spaces, because even a lot of black churches that have black bodies and black leaderships aren't black theologically. That's a whole other conversation we can have.
Yeah.
All right.
Fair.
Break Every Chain. When you hear it in the what was it? Is it People Culture? I forgot the name of the group that originally did it. When you hear it in that context, and then you hear Tasha's version, right? There's something distinctly different
For sure.
about those two versions, right?
Yeah.
Even when you hear, I believe it's Timothy Figueroa who's actually doing a lot of those ad libs towards the end.
Oh wow.
Right?
Yeah.
It's Timothy Figueroa. You hear how that song shifts in spaces, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how it actually shifts atmospheres, right? The same thing with Sanak's Waymaker, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sanak,
Yeah.
she's all the way in Africa. She had never stepped foot on this continent when that song was released, right? Then you heard the two different versions, right? So you heard a version that was done once it was able to be licensed.
Mhm.
But then you hear hers, right? And
Yeah.
let's say this: she has the diasporic, right, experience of being, it's controversial, right, from the African diaspora, right, being black, right, the context, right. But there's something distinctly different about when her voice is on it versus when you hear, other people sing it, because it's the identification, and I say it's in the voice, right? There's something that comes out
Yeah.
in the voice when they sing. When Tasha gets to "I Hear the Chains Falling," it's like, whoa, right? Woo, right?
Yeah,
When
man.
Sanat gets to that Waymaker Miracle Worker and she's driving that thing, right? It's almost at a point where you can't do anything else but surrender to the mood of the room.
Yeah.
And be in the community with people who identify with that. So I think the voicing has a lot to do with it, vocally. And I think even when there are moments when singers and artists, when we try to shift, we can't help but to, there's a moment where it sneaks in, right? My last project, I tried to be slick, right? I was like, I'm gonna get this Christian Stanfield, Jesus paid it all. This is gonna be my CCM way. Like that was my thinking, right? I'm gonna cross over. And when when people heard it, and even even I'm not gonna say any names because I can't, we're not plugging on here, right? Even the head of the label, she was like, they're still black, right? Like you
It's like, sir, we see you. Like,
but we see you, right? You did
yeah.
well trying to be Gaither in the beginning, but once the song evolved, like, okay,
That's hilarious.
oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised his life from the dead, for somebody black and
Yeah,
somebody
man.
who has had to have life resurrected, in many aspects, your joy resurrected,
For
your hope
sure.
resurrected. It's different than when Christian Stanfield did. I love his version, right? But she was like,
Yeah.
this ain't gonna fly. This still a gospel song, so don't even try to send it to K-Love, right? So it's something
Because they're
that
gonna be
comes out.
able to tell. Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna be like, nah. Oh, this song developed. We can't play this. You too emotional, right?
Yeah.
You connect to that. So
That's great. That's really good. No, I mean, Brady, man, that's such a layered question. Because I think you can bring in people who have those elements, who have those gospel elements. But it's almost, I don't want to say it's gentrifying, but it's like you can't pick and choose what you want from a culture. Like either you take the culture in as a whole. Like if you take bits and pieces of it, it's not the same. Like you may have the look of it, it may have certain feel of it, but it's not going to be the same, in my opinion, because like you just took a certain part of that culture. But if you don't take our stories with you, if you don't take that with it, like, yes, it can still be gospel music, but I just think there's so much that's wrapped up in our culture. There's so many things that in gospel music that are wrapped up in our culture. Like it's hard to just pick one without getting the other. Like you can have a form of it and it can sound, it can look, you can even feel like, but it's a lot that there's so many layers to that. So yeah, because I don't want to just say like these people can't go into those spaces to be genuine, and affect and have change and even create an atmosphere there. Like all that's possible. But yeah, it's a little bit of, yeah, it's not the same. It's just not the same. It's just not the same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I would definitely say that it's hard to honestly somewhat control that within yourself. So if you grew up Black church and in Black gospel, and you go to those spaces, it's kind of hard to like really get, when you're in a new space, to kind of, maintain, kind of keep composure, because you're trying to function
Just
in this
say it. Just go ahead and say it.
go, go,
Just say
go,
it.
go ahead and say it.
Just say it.
I'll quote it. I'll quote it.
I didn't want to say the words that the person said with the Facebook.
I'll say
That's
it.
hilarious.
But like it's hard, and sometimes, and like Carlos, you kind of admitted to, like you can try, but it's either not gonna be genuine or just flat out not gonna work.
And the audience may not be able to connect the same also, because like they don't have the same history with those phrasings and that story and just like those songs, or even how you're presenting it. They don't have the same cues. Like culturally, they don't have the same cues, so it's not going to resonate the same way with that audience because it's not the same culture. Like they don't have the same history that we have with gospel music. So it's yeah,
And
yeah.
And I even think on we're going off of that, like whenever we flip it back to us, whenever let's say Black church, Black gospel looks to embrace, let's say CCM, we were just kind of low key clowning around not too long ago about oceans and stuff.
Yeah.
Ocean. We can't relate to no ocean.
Yeah, we ain't got time to be on no beaches.
And the songs are great. I love like Gyra. I love Promises. But it only takes me to a certain point, and then I feel a little unfulfilled personally, because where I understand the truth in there, I understand the truth that God can be all encompassing. I understand the truth in that. There's missing a passion in it to where it might be more of an appreciation that God is all encompassing. As for me, it's a desire to have Him because He's all encompassing. Because of culture, what I've gone through, what I've been through, when I seen that, I'm singing it because I need him to be all encompassing at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Being all encompassing at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to praise him for being all encompassing at that moment, not just acknowledging, hey, you know what? God's pretty all encompassing.
Yeah. There's an emotion you're trying to tap into. Like there's something that for you that's missing. There's a seasoning or there's an element that's missing for you. Like it can still be good. It can still be good food, but like what you need, you specifically, what you grew up on, what got your mom through, what got granny through, like you want that. I want what they had. Like because that's my reference point. Like I can't connect always with that. And it's not even a right or wrong thing. It's a lot of it is cultural. I just believe like a lot of it is rooted in just culture. Like some things that I'm looking for, like if that's not there, I won't be able to connect with it like as much. Like you can connect with it on a mental level and say, yes, I can resonate with that. But like gospel music for us is different because like there's certain cues in it that we can connect with, but like that's what I need. I need that like I need that pick me up. Like and some CCM music doesn't always have that. Like it can have the truth, it can have that, but I think because we are emotional people and there are there's stories that are connected to it for us, like we need that. Yeah, we need those connections.
Yeah, if I could
So yeah.
jump in there, it was Stellars Vegas, maybe 2015.
Mhm.
We were in a panel, and the comment was made. There was a CCM writing session in Nashville,
Okay.
major writing session. And one of the writers that was in the room was asked very blatantly, why is gospel trying to model itself after CCM?
Mm.
And they were like, oh, because it was popular. And the CCM writers in their room said, we don't want you to do what
Wow.
we're doing. We're still trying to figure out how you're doing what you're doing naturally,
Right. Right. Right.
and y'all are chasing us.
Y'all chasing
Our
us.
music
Yeah.
is right.
Yeah.
Our music is not written for your context. Why are
Yeah.
you chasing us? Right now that brings up a lot of other layers, right?
For
Mm.
sure. For sure.
Being very blatant. Um, but ever since that moment, in a couple of years ago, there was an article that came out that said that CCM artists and writers are very intentional with not writing about the social issues
Yeah,
of
man.
people, right?
Yeah.
So taking a piece of us, as you mentioned
Hmm.
earlier, and trying to put us in these contexts, you know, when we talk about God being on our side and things like that, God worked it out for me. When I didn't have any food to eat, all these
Yeah,
things
man.
brings God into a space where it makes people have to be accountable to the God that they say that they serve, right? And so that becomes a very challenging thing when you start singing about a God that is watching what you're doing while
Wow.
you are okay with
Wow.
people still being hungry and not having access to health care. You're
Wow.
okay with children being in cages on the border. You're okay with black and brown communities still being under resourced in the midst of a pandemic, right? While you're sitting up
Wow.
here praying for African angels. You don't want African angels because you don't even care about black folks. You don't want our angels.
Shout out to them African
Y'all
angels,
don't want our
man.
angels.
Shout
Shout
out,
out to
yo, those African angels came, when I tell you, they came
Wrong
through
angel.
swinging. They were like, right, right.
Bro,
So
that's hilarious, man.
like the whole
That's a great point, though. Yeah.
you want a piece of it, but not all of it. If
Yeah,
you're gonna
man.
call it, if you want to call down on the God of gospel, then you
Mm.
asking for a God of conviction that's gonna, and let's say this, convict even us that are complicit,
Yeah.
right, with
For
capitalism
sure.
and the empire, right? I
Mhm.
get
For
convicted all
sure.
the time. I'm like, look at me, sit up here. I'm preaching on justice, and look at my closet. Lord have
Yeah,
mercy, right?
man.
Like
Yeah, man. No, that's
I'm,
real.
I'm an
That's
agent
very
of
real.
capitalism, right?
Yeah,
So
man. That's
so
real.
so that reality, that gospel brings a whole God into the room, and are we really ready to reconcile that tension in our spaces where we say that we don't want this sound, but as you said, Sean, we want kind of this image of it, right?
Yeah.
This kind of feigned fake reality that we have, gospel in this space, but also CCM. We're going to try to make it mix, but are we ready to handle theologically what the
man.
God of Black gospel actually has to say about the ways which we're moving in the world and about justice, right? So
That's
I think
really
about
good.
that often.
That conviction piece is good, man. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, cause I look back because I'll be more direct with this and address to the Kingdom Tour. No affiliation with the Kingdom Podcast.
None.
You have in this show the moment where you have the Mav City artists, you have basically the non-black ones, the white ones, leading the Mav City songs, and then the black ones will join Kurt and either lead the more black tailored Mav songs or the
Mm-hmm.
Kirk Franklin songs.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the whole moment where we had the pews gathered in the circle, and this the Kurt set. When I went to the concert here in Oklahoma City, I looked around the arena, and during that moment, ain't gonna lie, white folks was confused. They was like, we don't know these songs.
And they don't. Yeah, they still don't.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know that one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then I watched the video clips on YouTube where in the circle, where the restraint was lost quite a few times on the tour. The white or non-black church,
Yeah.
they're clapping and they
Yeah.
don't know what else to do. And I think that's a huge testament to, like, well, for one, what black gospel, black worship is, and then two, the true difference between when we look at black gospel and what we might consider CCM, Christian music, or anything outside of like our realm and our space. The idea of putting like a Mad City with a Kurt Franklin is great. When they acknowledge that this is what Kingdom looks like, I love that truth.
Yeah.
But when you had to like function in that by having literally two worship sets mixed together to make one show because of history, systems that were put into place, traumas, generations of traumas, and then, in my opinion, split theologies.
Okay. So, I'll say this: like, you're not wrong. Everything you're saying, you're not wrong in what you're saying. What I will say, I can't, and I don't think you're saying this, but I will shoot Kirk and even Maverick City some bail in the sense is like, we can't put all the pressure on them to solve all that in the 3-hour concert. Like they can't solve all those problems that you touched on because there's a systemic issue also that has led to it. And I can appreciate when someone is trying to bridge that gap. It's trying to create a space where people of all races and color and cultures can worship together. So I do salute the effort. But I do think on a grander scale, I could see why someone would be offended that Maverick City is being propped up as the new sound of gospel music. I can understand why someone would be offended by that, or why someone would react or feel a way about that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Oh no, you can finish this point.
No, I was done. I was just done. I was just trying to shoot them some bail because like that is a hard place to be in. And I'm gonna go biased. I'm a Kirk Franklin fan too. So, but I think I do see him putting an effort to try to reach back and grab that next generation and say, okay, what are the kids that are, because like I said, like that generational thing where it's like these are his grandkids. Like he's not gonna be able to immediately connect with them, but he can connect with somebody that can connect with that generation. It's just like, okay, y'all seem to have a pulse that I can't connect to. I want to give y'all the platform to be able to connect with these people. So I can appreciate his effort. I don't know, man. It's tough. Like because I'm not the biggest. I don't listen to a lot of worship style music sonically. I just don't listen to a lot of that music. So, but I don't know. I can see why someone would be offended by them being propped up as the new gospel music. So,
so that leads me kind of to my last question.
Yeah.
For you guys, what would you say is, like, where are we at within, let's say, Black gospel music today? Going back to what we kind of touched on earlier, we hit on the idea, and from a comment that Kurt Funkin had made, it said that Map City is the new wave of gospel music, and we
Yeah.
put it as a thing where it's like what we saw at the Kingdom tour. Like, you talking about that's new gospel music? and even if we look at like Kurt, in his time 20 years ago, someone probably said underneath their breath, Kurt's gonna be the new gospel music. I couldn't say it out loud back then because church was a little bit stronger in its influence today. But someone probably said that that's the new gospel.
Yeah.
And honestly, we see influence that because from Kurt, we had Fred and Kurt kind of at the same time pushing gospel outside of the traditional church settings. Then you get Ty Tribbett's, you get Tonés, and you get all these other artists that that start stretching and pushing that idea that this where Kurt is kind of starting at is now extending out what gospel music is back mid 90s, early 2000s, to where today Ty Tribbett songs, that's a National Baptist Youth rally song. Like, we don't think nothing of it. We expect Ty Tribbett song.
Yeah.
So what would you guys say is the state of Black gospel music today?
Yeah. I would say, and to your point, I think you were talking about how Ty Tribbett, like, his music now is considered, not necessarily traditional, but like it's more acceptable now. But I think that's because the generation, it's shifting now. Like, our generation is in leadership now. So like, that's the music that was near and dear to us. So I think Maverick City, and this is why I'm not mad. I'm personally not mad at Kirk giving Maverick City that platform and saying, hey, this is the new gospel music. I view it as him just kind of welcoming them in and saying, hey, you're a part of this genre too. Like, I don't want you guys to feel like you're left out in the cold. Like, you're a part of this. You're very much a part of this, because what does that generation listen to? What are the kids what do they listen to? That generation, they're probably most of them are listening to Maverick City. Most of the kids are coming up like that's who their reference point is. Like, for what gospel music or what Christian music is in general, it's Maverick City. That's their reference point. So it's in their hands. I think there will always be a place for the music that we grew up listening to. There will always be a place for that. But I think at some point we do have to hand this off to them. It's going to be theirs, and like, they get to determine what it is. I think we have to do a good job of saying, hey, this is what this is the history of gospel music. This is where it comes from. This is what made gospel music as powerful and as long lasting as it was. We have to be able to do that. And that's why I think Kirk is a good ambassador, because like, he's able to do that. He's able to bring them on and say, hey, this is the history of gospel music. I can hand you this baton, but when I hand it to you, this is what it had to go through to get to you. Like, so be careful with it. So I'm not necessarily mad at him bringing them in, because I think he can actually guide them in some of the issues that we have touched on. I think he wants to give them that element of authenticity that I think a lot of other worship music doesn't have. He wants to give them that element of authenticity, which I think could help them navigate this gospel space. So yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay.
So I'm gonna end by making people mad.
Oh dang.
Ain't on the high
So,
note, bro.
so to be honest, and I make this this assertion in some work that I'm working on now. There is really only one pure, untainted Black gospel music genre right now that still exists, that has not been impacted by another culture, and that is quartet music.
Hey,
Um,
it ain't changed.
it has not changed.
Yeah.
However, its influence right now
Mhm.
is major,
Yeah.
right? We're talking about, a very bare bones type of sound with people that just have to sing, right? So I'm thinking about, Lisa Noel Smith, who is undoubtedly one of the most influential female gospel singers of our time, right? I'm thinking
Yeah.
about Jacqueline Carr, right? I'm thinking about Leandria
Yeah.
Johnson, right? I'm thinking about,
Yeah.
Zacardi Cortez. I'm thinking
Yeah.
about the Walls Group, right?
Yeah.
These are all quartet singers. You're looking at all these viral clips of choirs now, Vincent Bohannon and all of them. All of their songs are quartet drives, right?
Yeah.
Even the slow ballads, there's such a strong quartet influence. So I think the state of Black gospel music right now is actually going to get ready to reverse itself and
Okay.
actually start to pay homage to the lone pure gospel art form that still exists, which is quartet. And we're starting to see it, right? Where, it's Stout, right? You guys know Stout. She's an
Oh,
R&B killing.
Doc,
I'm
she
watching her. I'm
is a beast. And she is ridiculous. She
It's a
is.
quartet show.
Oh no, for sure. There's definitely no, for sure. Her stage presence, quartet all day. Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
so I think even with Maverick City, right?
yeah.
When we're listening to the songs that's crossing over, you can hear those distinct Black gospel quartet markers,
Mm-hmm.
right? We
Yeah.
talked about the Stellas earlier. That moment, it
When the
popped with
seasoning came out on
Leandria,
stage,
and that
yeah,
season came out.
that seasoning
Leandria
came out
and
there, yeah.
Zacardi.
Mm-hmm.
It just it's and
Yeah.
once again, I'll close by saying this: as much as we talk about Black gospel being belonging to the culture, and one thing I teach in my classes at Bucknell University is that gospel is also one of the most inclusive art forms.
For sure.
It has been shown to bring people together. You can go overseas, and they don't care what you sing overseas as long as you sing "Oh Happy Day."
Come
All
on.
right, you
Yeah.
got to do "Oh Happy Day," and they will
Yeah.
pay $75 for that ticket as
Yeah.
long as you sing "Oh Happy Day." Right, because it's inclusive, it brings people together. They may not necessarily understand from a first-person perspective those stories, but they
Yeah.
can appreciate the authenticity and the heart that has gone into writing. And the
Yeah.
same thing with quartet. It's that storytelling. It's that preaching. It's coming straight from the heart. It's coming from people who are struggling,
Yeah,
in some of
man.
the most under-resourced places in our country. But most of all, it's people giving their all so that people can hear the gospel and
Yeah.
hear the possibilities of what it's like to be in a relationship with Jesus, and to know that there's a God that's still concerned about their everyday affairs. So the state of gospel music, I think it's going to revert back. Everything is cyclical. It's going to go back, and
For
hopefully
sure.
gospel quartet will get its due.
Because it ain't going nowhere.
I
It ain't.
think our guy PJ Morton is helping lead that charge.
PJ, yeah, he's a good bridge for sure. He's a good
PJ is
connector.
doing.
Yeah, he's a
Yeah,
good
you mess
connector
around at a
point.
PJ concert and get saved.
Oh yeah, he'll be here Tuesday, man. He'll be in Oklahoma City Tuesday. I'm there.
Oh really? Oh, we're at.
Yeah, at the Tower Theater. You're gonna be
Oh,
there.
okay, cool.
Yeah, man.
Man,
Get some tickets, man.
see, Shine is cool. He knows stuff.
I'll be out here, man.
But hey, bros, this was good.
Absolutely, man.
I think we did a great job of kind of breaking down um, our various perspectives of Black gospel, how it can be affected internally through just shifts in culture, and the external factors of it. Someone trying to knock in on the door to kind of break in, Martha Pizzini, or one trying to get out.
Yeah, we still have questions about the traditional female. That fella that she was.
That's hilarious.
But no, like I said, I think it's an important conversation as we look at the growth of our church, and I say our church, whether it's Black Baptist, whether it's AME, whether it's non-denominational, wherever there are our people preaching the gospel, um, we have a worship there as well. And I think that when we look to not define, not clarify, not just overly explain, but just address the roots of our gospel, of our worship, and also look at ways that we can improve it and spread those wings. A tree is no good if it just goes straight up and down. Once you have your roots settled and you have your trunk, then you spread to where we can see where the other branches of gospel can go. And all it does is creates more shade, it creates more comfort, and creates more foliage. I think that is whenever we can reach more people. Because like we said earlier, we have a message in our worship. I might not get through the 45-minute sermon this morning, but that Kurt Franklin song, he'll never put more than I can bear.
Yeah, man.
I put the lyrics as a Facebook post, and I got about 7 amens in the comment section because people read it, they sang it in their head.
For sure, man.
I could have put a whole scripture video, a whole sermon video up on my Facebook and got about views, and that's it. Yeah. But the messaging in our worship, it preaches to us, and I think that's important that we had this conversation on how to look at how we're looking at gospel music and everything going forward. So once again, guys, thank you for tuning in to episode 2 of the Kingdom Podcast. I'm Brother Brady, your host. Once again, thank you so much to our guests, the one and only Reverend Carlos Nichols, the new iRock director, and my good brother and friend, Sean C. Johnson. Check out both of my guys on Apple Music. Search their names, find their music, stream it. Just play it on a loop so they get as many streaming accounts as they possibly can.
Yes.
And let's spread their gospel on these branches that came out of the roots from our lovely Black church. So,
absolutely.
That being said, once again, Brady Watson, your host of the Kingdom Podcast. Once again, this is a podcast that addresses everything from God, His church, His word, and His people. Thank you guys once again. It's Kingdom time. Have a good evening. Peace.